There is a silent power that has always been present within you. It does not come from the outside world, nor does it depend on circumstances, but it springs from the divine essence you have carried since the day you were born. In this age of turmoil, many have forgotten who they are, chasing after the noise of life and losing touch with that inner voice, the only place that can heal, uplift, and renew them from the very root. This video is not merely a message. It is a journey home, a journey to help you remember that you are not lost. You are not lacking. You are simply being called back to the place where divine power has always been waiting for you to open the door and step in. Walk with me through 16 profound layers of awareness, so that you may not only understand with your mind, but feel with your soul that you are the very place where God is made manifest. The supreme power lies within you. The greatest power in the universe does not reside on some sacred mountain, nor does it hide deep beneath the ocean, nor is it sealed away by some ancient stream of time. It does not depend on those deemed special, nor is it in the hands of priests or sages. And it is certainly not something to be begged for or sacrificed to obtain. That power is present within you, silent but not weak, hidden yet never extinguished, waiting for you to look directly at it, to acknowledge it, and to use it as an inseparable part of the very life you carry. Every morning when you wake, while you are grumbling to yourself or hurriedly checking your messages, a miracle has already taken place without your awareness. You have opened your eyes with the very same energy that created the stars, formed the galaxies, and lights the sun each day. It is this very power that keeps your heart beating, that causes the cells in your body to regenerate without your intervention, that operates a system of intelligence more intricate than any technology humanity has ever conceived. And yet, instead of living in a state of gratitude and awe for the sheer wonder of your own existence, most of us step into the day feeling lacking, insecure, and even meaningless. The reason is not that you do not possess that energy, it is that you have forgotten how to name it. You have lost the ability to recognize the divine element within yourself. From a young age, you were taught that you must strive to become valuable, that you must study to surpass others, that you must work hard to deserve a peaceful life. No one told you that you already carry enough, that you already have it all, that you are the complete expression of an all-powerful, universal mind. No one told you that you are an inseparable part of the divine. You do not need to plead with God to grant you power. You are the place where that power is manifested. Yet instead of living as a radiant center, you live as a shadow. Instead of using thought as a creative instrument, and you allow thought to rule, you like a fog covering the sky. Instead of walking as one who holds the key, you bow your head, waiting for someone else to open the way. And after living long enough in that state, you begin to believe that you are truly weak, truly powerless, truly unworthy of trusting yourself. Yet false belief can never replace the truth. The truth does not change simply because you do not believe in it. A spark remains a spark even when buried in ashes, and the divine power remains present in you. No matter how long you have turned away from it, all you need to do is not to search for it, but to stop. Stop running away. Stop striving to become someone else. Stop making excuses that you are not ready. Simply stop and turn inward. Every thought you think, every emotion you nurture, every word you speak is sending out a frequency that shapes the reality you experience. There is not a single moment in which you are not creating something. The question is whether you are creating consciously, because if you do not choose, your subconscious will choose for you, and it will choose what is familiar, what is programmed by fear, limitation, and scarcity absorbed from your past. Power does not demand that you be perfect. It only requires that you be fully present, fully awake in every choice, every word, every breath. When you do this, You no longer need the outside world to change. The transformation within you will cause everything outside to rearrange itself. You do not need to try to be strong. You only need to stop pretending that you are weak. You do not need to beg for the light. You only need to stop covering your own eyes. You do not need to wait for a miracle to happen. You are the miracle, waiting to be awakened. And when you begin to live as though this is true, and the world around you will begin to shift, to reflect it. No one can give you this power, and no one can take it from you. You may forget it, deny it, you reject it, but you cannot lose it. It is the very thing that makes you who you are, and truth cannot be taken away, can only be forgotten. But today, in this very moment, you can choose to remember, not for a reason, not for proof, but through a clear and unwavering decision that you will no longer live as a copy, that you will live as one who carries within the original light of life itself. And that is where power begins to return, not from outside, but from the very place you once refused it. For there is nowhere else it can dwell, except within your own awareness. And once you have seen it, you will never again be able to believe that you are small. You are the living expression of God. If there is one thing that keeps human beings living within limits without ever realizing it, it is the misunderstanding of their true nature. We grow up with scattered definitions of what a human being is, of identity, of value. Some are taught that they are sinners. Some are fed the belief that they are products of circumstance. Some spend their entire youth unable to answer the most fundamental question of all: who am I? Yet no one has ever been a mistake of creation. No soul is born out of accident. For if the divine is all-powerful, then the divine cannot create anything meaningless. And if you are here, if you are breathing, if you are reading these words, then the life within you is proof of an irreversible truth. You are a living expression of God, not in a symbolic sense, not as a metaphor, not as a poetic image, but as a profound reality. The divine mind does not create soulless replicas. It does not produce puppets, nor does it duplicate itself. Each soul is a unique and irreplaceable expression of the same sacred essence. Every person, by the fact of their existence, is revealing a special facet of the boundless life that no one else can express. When you breathe, when you think, when you feel something deeply, it is God experiencing the world through you. Have you ever felt, even once in your life, that there is something deep within you that goes far beyond the ordinary definitions the world has placed upon you? A sense that you are here not merely to survive, not merely to repeat a string of identical days, but to fulfill something greater, higher, more sacred? That question is not your imagination. It is the echo of truth tapping gently at the door of your awareness. If you've ever felt it, even fleetingly, you have heard the call of the divine within you. Look at any work of art. The artist never strives to copy themselves. Each creation is a unique expression, carrying the distinct imprint of the inspiration from which it was born. In the same way, you are not a smaller version of something greater. You are an unrepeatable expression of that greatness. You do not bear the image of God only in form. You carry the ability to operate according to the same sacred principles: creative thought, free will, and unconditional love. It is no accident that you can imagine, envision, love, choose, and transform. This is the divine blueprint within you at work. We have been conditioned to measure value by the outer layer: a beautiful body, an admired name, a large fortune. Yet all of these can vanish in a single gust of time. The only thing that remains unharmed, untouched by age, unbroken by the years, is the divine presence within you. No one can reach it. No insult can dim it. No circumstance has the authority to take it from you. For it is you, not the part you perform for the world. But the part that remains whole after every loss, after every wound, after every disappointment, it is the place where peace never runs dry, where wisdom never loses its way, where light never goes out. And if you are the expression of the divine, then every thought you think holds creative power. Every word you speak is a decree sent forth from the center of creation. Every emotion you embrace is a current flowing into the formation of the reality you live. Not only when you meditate or pray, but in every moment of daily life, when you are angry, when you blame, when you shrink in self-doubt or harbor resentment, you step away from your role as a co-creator with God. But when you choose love, when you choose silence instead of attack, when you forgive, instead of condemn, the power within you is activated. You cannot ask for divine power without recognizing that you are the place it resides. Nor can you continue to belittle yourself and expect the universe to lift you up. The divine does not force you to believe anything, but once you acknowledge your true nature, everything else begins to shift. The outer world will adjust to reflect the truth within. Life around you will begin to move as though it is being directed by your very awakening. I know you may have heard many beautiful words in your life, but set them all aside for now. Hold on to only one. You are not a small creature striving toward the divine. You are the divine experiencing life in human form. When you remember this, you no longer need to seize value from others. You no longer live to prove anything. You only need to live in truth, because that truth is already enough. If you are here, listening to these words, I thank you, for your presence in this moment is not merely reception. It is affirmation that you are on the path of awakening. And you are not alone. Each time one person remembers their divine nature, the light reaches farther. And perhaps, just perhaps, you are the very point from which that light will spread into a place where before there was only darkness. Divine power operates through thought. Thought is not some vague movement in the mind. It is the instrument through which divine power operates, the channel by which reality is formed. When a thought arises, it does not simply pass like a drifting cloud. It leaves an imprint. It takes shape. And when it is repeated long enough, it becomes a structure, a condition, the very life you are living in this moment. Everything you see outwardly is only the tip of the iceberg. The submerged part, the part that truly determines its shape, is what you think about incessantly in silence. The human mind is not merely a device for remembering or reacting. It is a sacred space through which divine energy flows, transforming into images, emotions, ideas, and eventually crystallizing into the physical world, what you call reality. Your work, your health, your relationships are all tangible manifestations of thought structures sustained in the mind over time. You do not live in the world as it is. You live in the world as you think it is. And for that reason, changing your thinking is not simply altering an opinion, it is reconstructing the entire foundation that creates your life. No thought is harmless or meaningless. Every thought you hold is a seed planted in the soil of the subconscious. And that soil does not distinguish between good or bad, should or should not. It simply nurtures whatever you feed it with your attention. A thought repeated over and over. Even something as simple as, I am not good enough. I am unworthy. I am always betrayed, will be registered by the subconscious as a command. It will turn those sentences into lived experience, because that is its function. It does not understand sarcasm. It does not grasp wordplay. It has no discerning wisdom. It only knows to receive and to carry out. Divine power is not outside this law. It operates through thought. And for this reason, when you learn to master your thinking, you are taking command of the very gateway to infinite creative power. The difference between a person who lives in peace, generosity, and fulfillment And a person who struggles with scarcity, pain, and chaos is not luck. It lies in where they place their thoughts each day. The first has learned to choose thoughts the way one selects the materials to build a home. The second allows the mind to be occupied by whatever passes through news, criticism, old memories, or nameless fears. Thought is the medium through which God works in and through you. You cannot see the divine with the naked eye, but you can sense it in the moments when you think in alignment with your divine nature. When you think of compassion, you are connecting with the current of healing energy. When you think of creativity, you are tapping into the flow of life itself. When you think of freedom, you are awakening your inherent omnipotence. It is not that you are manufacturing these things, they already exist, but you become the doorway through which they enter. And if the door is closed, the light cannot come in. If the door is open, the light will pour in effortlessly. Nothing in life happens apart from the process of thought. You may find yourself in circumstances you do not desire, but it is the way you react, the way you interpret, the way you name the problem that prolongs your suffering. An event is just an event. Your mind decides whether it is collapse or breakthrough. And so, the practice of choosing your thoughts is not some lofty spiritual exercise. It is the practical act of restoring order to your life. Most people are unaware of this process. They believe their thoughts are objective, that the world simply is this way, that people really are cruel, that life truly is harsh. In reality, they are living in a picture they themselves have painted, and they have forgotten that they are the painter. In that forgetting, they go about asking for permission to live, permission from others to be happy, permission from circumstances to be at peace. But no one can grant you that authority but yourself, for it does not come from outside, it comes from where you place your thoughts. Thought should not be left to run wild like an untended stream. It must be directed like a wise irrigation system. You must ask, do I allow this thought to take root in my mind? Does it carry life, or does it carry death? Does it expand me, or does it make me shrink? Does it come from my divine nature, or from fearful memories? And when you choose consistently, day after day, you begin to feel the power return, not the power to control others, but the power to control yourself. You do not need to change everything at once. A single thought chosen at the right moment, and a moment of silence in the midst of anger. It's a gentle affirmation in a wave of panic. These are enough to change the direction. Each time you do this, you are restoring the original order. You are a co-creator with life. Every thought matters, because every thought is creating something, and sooner or later, you will live inside what you have thought. Thought is the first form of creation. If you keep it pure, true, and directed upward, life will have no choice but to rise to match it. The divine does not need to be begged. It only needs a place to express itself, and your mind is that place. Why we forget this power. No one truly loses their divine power. It is never stolen from you, nor is it taken out of your hands. The only thing that happens is that you forget it. You lose the remembrance, not the essence, and that forgetting does not happen in a single moment. It is a long, quiet process, reinforced by layers of false beliefs absorbed from the world around you. When a child is born, it carries no sense of limitation. It does not fear fame or dread public opinion. It does not care about being perfect or being approved of. It is fully present. It trusts its own abilities naturally, the way it breathes. It never doubts whether it is worthy of love. It has never learned that it is flawed. But over time, these ideas are taught, repeated, and imprinted as if they were truth. And so, the divine is pushed to the back of consciousness. You begin to learn to see yourself through the eyes of others. When scolded, you believe you are wrong. When compared, you believe you are lesser. When you fail to meet expectations, you believe you are a failure. And from these thoughts, you construct a small, diminished image of yourself. That image is not you, but you come to believe it is real. And every time you believe it, you step further away from your power, not because the power has left you, but because you no longer recognize its presence. The greatest trap lies in the fact that we have been trained to look outward for our worth from childhood. You were rewarded when you did things right and punished when you did them wrong. You were loved when you were compliant and rejected when you rebelled. You learned that love is conditional, that you must meet certain standards to be accepted, and from there, you traded the truth within you for the approval of the world outside. You gradually forgot your own voice, forgot your intuition, forgot that natural sense that you are enough. No one told you that you already carry wholeness within you. No one showed you that you are the very place where the divine is expressing itself. On the contrary, you were taught that it exists outside of you, that you must beg for it, submit to it, be granted it by someone else. And so you seek approval from others, seek validation from society, seek promises from external powers in order to feel worthy. Yet all these pursuits, no matter how comforting in the moment, never touch the deepest place within you, because what you are seeking has never been outside. The power has never left you, but your attention has left it. You no longer turn toward the inner center, where life moves in pure flow. Instead, you place your attention on results, on lack, on judgment, on conditions that endlessly shift. And when your attention is scattered, you no longer recognize how you are operating your creative power. You are still creating, but unconsciously, you are still using thought. But to create fear, you are still making choices, but from a state programmed by memory and reflex. This state of forgetting is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a universal human experience. It is a natural part of the journey home. No one is born fully awakened, but every soul carries the potential for awakening. And in truth, forgetting makes remembering sacred, because without ever being lost, you could never understand the treasure of finding yourself again. The important thing is that you are not bound by this history of forgetting. Memory can be rewritten, awareness can be expanded, and the truth, once recognized, can shift the entire direction of your life. You do not need to go far. You only need to turn inward. You do not need to learn something new. You only need to stop, observe, and look deeply at what has always been there, unnoticed. Returning to your power is not a quest to bring something from the outside in. It is a process of removal, peeling away each false belief, each worn-out pattern, each unconscious reaction that has taken root too long in the mind. And when the final covering falls away, you will not find anything strange or new. You will see only yourself clear, free, and powerful, as you were in the beginning. That clarity needs no proof. It reveals itself. Forgetting is natural. Remembering is a choice, and you can choose it at any moment. You do not need to do anything more. You do not need to become someone new. You only need to pause in a single moment of stillness and whisper in your mind that you are ready to remember. That readiness is the signal that you are opening the door again for divine power to move through you. And from that moment on, you are no longer ruled by forgetting. You become the keeper of the flame, the one who remembers, the source of light in a world still fast asleep. The law of attention: where you focus is where you create. The human mind is a field of energy in constant motion. Yet few realize that where you place your attention is where you are planting the seeds of creation. Attention is not merely a passive act of awareness. It is the invisible current that energizes whatever you direct it toward. Each time you focus on a thought, an emotion, or an image, you are breathing life into it. And if you hold your attention there long enough, it will begin to reshape the lived experience you call your life. It is not what you want that becomes reality. It is what you give your attention to. For attention is the water that nourishes the seeds within the subconscious. When you water worry, you grow a life filled with anxiety. When you water gratitude, you call forth a reality soaked in blessings, not because the universe plays favorites, but because the universe is neutral. It does not respond to what you plead for, but to where you place your heart. In a world overflowing with noise, images, data, and contradictions, attention becomes the most precious asset you possess. For whatever you offer your attention to, you are inviting into the sacred space of your consciousness. And there it begins to operate. You cannot cling to fear and expect a life of peace. You cannot spend hours worrying about scarcity and still expect the flow of abundance, not because you are unworthy, but because by fixing your gaze on what you do not want, you close the channel to what you truly need. Many believe they are trapped by their circumstances. In truth, they are trapped in a repeated pattern of attention. They think endlessly about what is wrong, speak endlessly about what they hate. I feel endlessly the insecurity they do not wish to live with, then wonder why these things keep showing up. But if someone plants chili seeds in the soil, waters them every day, and demands grapes, the soil is not at fault. The planter has misunderstood the law. Life, too, is simply the honest reflection of where your attention rests most consistently. You cannot stop a passing thought from appearing, but you can pause, observe, and redirect. Any moment you shift your attention from fear to trust, from blame to responsibility, from lack to the felt sense of enough, you are changing the kind of seed you are planting in the ground. Change may not happen instantly, but when you redirect attention steadily and persistently, you are redrawing the map of your vibration, and it is that map which will determine what you attract in the future. One of the subtle mistakes people make is believing their attention is harmless, that thinking a little about something negative won't matter, that dwelling on gossip or trivialities won't have an effect. But in the universe of consciousness, nothing is neutral. Every direction of your gaze is an act of shaping. Every moment spent attending to what does not give life is a moment delaying your own expansion. No one can extinguish the light you carry, but you can dim it by continually looking toward the shadows. Some say they have tried positive thinking, but nothing changed. They forget that 1 hour of positive focus cannot counteract 10 years of living in doubt, or fear, and unconscious reaction. Real change demands not just choosing a new thought, but holding attention on it as you would guard a flame through the night. At first, it may feel difficult, but it is not difficult because you lack ability. It is because you have not yet trained the habit of turning your gaze toward what is worthy of growth. Attention must be trained like a muscle. Each day you choose. Well, you strengthen it, and in time, your focus becomes so sharp that wherever you place your mind, good begins to grow there. No one can concentrate for you. No one can guard the gates of your awareness on your behalf. That is both your gift and your responsibility. You are the gatekeeper of your inner kingdom, and whatever person or thing is allowed inside is there by your permission. Once you understand this, you stop blaming the world. You begin to filter your attention as you would purify your drinking water. You choose what is allowed to remain in you. You remove what clouds the stream of your life, and you treasure each moment when your focus is rightly placed, for that is the moment you are creating a new reality. Each day, You are given thousands of opportunities to choose again where to place your attention. You do not need to do it all at once. Begin with just one thing. Focus on a thought that lifts you, an image that opens your heart, an emotion that calls you back to your true nature. And hold that attention as the core of how you live, not as a forced mental act, but as a sacred gesture. For attention is not simply a function of the mind, it is an act of the soul. It is the silent declaration that you are ready to live as one who remembers who you are. And that is where creation begins, not with noise, but with a gaze held in the right direction. Children, and the lesson of spiritual creation. A child sits by the shore, scooping damp sand into its hands, shaping a castle. It does not care what others think of its work. It seeks no certificate, waits for no praise, demands no promise of permanence. It simply builds because building is pure joy. It does not worry about the height, the perfection, or the lasting meaning of the sandy walls rising beneath its fingers. And when the waves rush in and wash away every trace, the child does not grow angry or sad. It simply laughs and begins again. This is a primal model of pure spiritual creation, an act unbound by success or failure, an unfiltered expression of life moving through an open consciousness. Children do not need to be taught how to create. They are living embodiments of the creative principle in its limitless operation. A broken branch can become a sword. A cardboard box transforms into a castle. A blanket draped over the shoulders becomes the cape of a superhero. In the world of a child, imagination is not an escape from reality. It is how reality expands in a sacred direction. There is no sharp division between what exists and what does not yet exist. For in the dimension of spirit, every possibility has a place, and children are souls still untouched by the forgetting of this ability. The problem is that as we grow, we are taught to become realistic, to distinguish right from wrong, to have plans, goals, strategies, and results. We learn to kill simple joy, replacing it with worry and judgment. The castles of sand must now be built of concrete, must be solid, must be recognized as valuable, and in the chase to prove ourselves, we lose the purest thing of all the ability to create, simply because it is life expressing itself through us, without reward or approval. Spiritual creation does not need to be displayed. It is not about writing great books or painting masterpieces. Spiritual creation happens each time you choose a thought instead of a conditioned reaction, each time you hold peace in the midst of chaos, each time you forgive in your heart. Instead of keeping resentment, it is the moment you stop acting from the old pattern and open space for something new to be born. In that moment, you have returned to the state of the child building with sand. You are no longer trying to control the outcome. You are letting the current of life flow through you in its purest form. Children do not cling to the past. They cry, and then they laugh. Moments later, they grow angry, and then forget instantly. They do not use memory to bind the future. This is why their creative spirit remains intact, because creation cannot flourish in a mind held captive by fear, regret, or blame. It can only exist in open space, where you are light enough not to drag the entire old world into a new moment. This is the inner space in which children live naturally, and it is a space you can return to at any time if you are willing to let go. You do not need to change who you are to do this. You only need to remember, for the part of you that knows how to create is still there. It has never been destroyed. You have only built walls around it, calling them reason, maturity, experience. But experience should not be a chain, it should be a door. If you use experience to shut down every new possibility, you are no longer living. You are only copying the old in a new form. But if you use experience as the foundation for expansion, you are using wisdom rightly. Children teach you that life does not need to be serious to be meaningful. The sacred does not need to be heavy. Light does not need to shout. And creation does not need to be acknowledged to have value. It only needs to be lived. Spiritual creation is the space you enter when you refuse to live by old patterns. When you stop interpreting the world through worn-out limits. When you stop reacting and start choosing. Each time you do this, you awaken the child within the part that knows no fear, no definition, no waiting for a miracle, because it is the miracle. This is the power of the voice within, not merely a voice you hear, but a space you return to, a space that does not need to be made, for it has always been there. You only need to stop being busy, stop being an adult for a moment, and return to that pure state of presence, and you will see everything begin to move in wondrous ways. The lesson from children is not about living more simply, it is about living more truly, not bound by comparison, not confined by labels, not afraid to express what you believe is beautiful, right, and worth living for. When you live this way, you are not just creating a better life, you are becoming an opening for light, giving the divine a chance to express itself freely. And perhaps that is the deepest purpose of life, not to achieve something, but to express the divine as freely as possible, like a child playing in the wind, smiling for no reason at all. I am the gateway to divine power. Each day you speak hundreds of sentences and think thousands of lines. Yet there are two words you carry into everything you say, whether consciously or not. These two words are the source of all creation, the spring from the deepest well of consciousness that flows outward to shape the reality you live in at every moment. Those words are I am. No one can live without using them, for they are the foundation of being itself. The question is not whether you say them, but how you wield the power of those words. For whatever you place after I am is planted into the subconscious as a command, and the subconscious does not joke. If you say, I am a failure, you are signing an invisible decree for your mind to follow that path. If you say, I am not good enough, you are laying the foundation for an empty reality, no matter how full it may appear on the outside. If you repeat, I am invisible, I am unhappy, I am unloved, the universe will not deny you, it will only expand what you affirm. It will not check whether you truly want it. It will simply operate by the principle of your inner declaration, and yet, for that very reason, you can turn back and choose differently. When you say, I am light, I am love, I am life unfolding, the divine within you is awakened, not because you are giving yourself a pleasant label, but because you are setting your consciousness in alignment with your deepest nature. You do not need to become something in order to be worthy of these words. You only need to remember that each time you say I am, you are stepping through a gateway to pure creative power. And that gateway is always open. You need only the right key. Language is not merely a tool of communication. It is a tool of creation. And I am is the deepest command line for the entire system within you. A child unprogrammed by fear will naturally say, I am happy. I am the best. I will do it. No one teaches them to believe this. They are simply living in harmony with an undivided nature. But then time, society, and labels begin to reshape their I am, from I am light to I am a mistake, from I am capable to I am inadequate. And when the sentence within changes, the entire outer world begins to change shape as well. What you must understand is that you cannot stop using I am. You may not speak it aloud, but in every action you take, you are reinforcing some form of I am. When you refuse an opportunity because you think you are not good enough, that is I am at work. When you feel ashamed in conversation That is, I am, whispering that you are unworthy. Every reaction, every choice, every smallest belief springs from the version of I am you are nurturing in your unconscious. Which means healing is not about finding something new. It is about turning inward, facing the place where I am has been distorted, and restoring the original truth. I am does not need to be adorned with elaborate words. Sometimes it is enough to sit in silence and repeat, I am alive. I am here. I am breathing. That alone can reconnect you to the divine within. No further description is required. You do not need to define yourself by any standard. You are, and that existence, in its deepest essence, is sacred. When you stop opposing yourself, stop adding labels, stop trying to mend your soul with borrowed tools, I am becomes transparent. And in that transparency, power is revealed. Think back over your day. What have you said after those two words? How many times have you called yourself by names that were never yours? How many times have you affirmed something untrue to the light you truly are? If you discover this, do not condemn yourself. Simply choose again. For every time you choose again, you steer the ship back to its true course. You take steps out of the maze of false identities and return to your original center. I am is not just a phrase, it is a creative declaration. It is the first step in renewing the mind, the door to a reality, no longer confined by the past. The invitation for the divine to enter daily life through human form, and when you learn to use I am consciously, you do not merely change your words, you change your being. You cease to live as one reacting to life and begin to live as one directing life through the stillness of your own presence. That is why every true spiritual tradition emphasizes returning to I am, not as a technical tool, but as a sacred act, a wordless affirmation that you are not separated from your source, that you have never left the light, and that you still hold the power to choose who you will embody in this very moment. No waiting, no conditions, only a choice, clear and complete. I am. And in that simplicity, power begins to move again. Tending the garden of the mind, you reap what you sow. The human mind is a living garden. It is never empty, whether you're aware of it or not. Every moment it is being planted. Every thought is a seed. Every emotion repeated is a stream of water. And over time, what you nurture in that garden will blossom or grow thorns. Nothing happens in your life that does not begin in that silent soil. Every result is the sweet fruit or bitter harvest of the spiritual seeds once sown. You cannot plant anger and harvest peace. You cannot plant fear and expect serenity. You cannot plant blame and then pray for love. This law does not bend for your emotions, does not soften for your circumstances, and does not grant exemption for ignorance. It simply operates honest and impartial. The garden of the mind does not wait for you to be ready before growing something. It works constantly. If you do not choose what to plant, it will automatically grow whatever seeds the wind carries in. And those seeds often come from the words of others, from collective fear, from unhealed past wounds, from habits of unconscious reaction. So if you do not tend your garden, someone else will plant in it for you, a negative neighbor, a news story full of panic, an old memory still in the dark. You will find yourself living in a garden without knowing what was planted there or when. The truth is, no soil remains barren. It will either feed the light or feed the shadows, but it will never stand still. Mastering the garden of the mind does not mean controlling every thought that is unrealistic. Thousands of ideas will pass through your head each day, but you have the power to choose which seeds to keep and which to let drift away. You need not worry about a fleeting negative thought. But if you hold it, turn it over again and again in your mind, and color it with emotion, then you have planted it in the ground and begun to water it. Mastery is the awareness in your choosing, not letting the soil of the mind be overrun by seeds of unknown origin. Every morning when you wake, you are standing in that garden. The question is not, how do I feel today? But, what will I choose to plant today? When you grasp this principle, you stop trying to fix the branches. You no longer wrestle with outer events as if they were the cause. You turn inward to the place where all things begin. You start planting seeds of gratitude. You tend to compassion. You choose to sow calm in the midst of noise. And the miracle is that when you do this consistently, your garden begins to change. At first, it may be just a few small blooms among the wild grass, but if you persist, you will see the transformation spread, because good seeds have the power to multiply if you protect them long enough from being choked by weeds. Many say they have tried positive thinking, but it did not work. They forget the garden has been neglected for too long, and the old seeds have taken deep root. One good thought cannot instantly uproot a 10-year-old tree of fear, but if each day you plant one wholesome seed and stop feeding the weeds, sooner or later you will see light prevail. Perseverance does not need to be loud, only steady. One action a day, one choice a moment, one gentle but clear affirmation that you will no longer let this garden grow by chance. The garden of the mind also needs clearing. You cannot only plant, you must also pull the weeds. Sometimes you must face old memories, false beliefs you once accepted without question, sentences like, I am not worthy, I always fail, I am abandoned. You cannot paint a positive gloss over roots still hidden in shadow. They must be brought into the light not to condemn, but to understand that you have the right to stop feeding them. When you pull weeds, you do not do it with anger, but with compassion, with the commitment that this garden deserves what is good, that you deserve to live in an inner space full of light. Tending the garden of the mind is a sacred act, for it is the place where the divine will express itself not in distant rituals, but in the seeds you choose each morning, in the emotions you water in your heart, in how you respond when others stumble, in your choice to forgive rather than resent, in refusing to let the seeds of the old world define the garden you are recreating from within. You do not need a perfect garden to begin. You only need to begin, and if you tend it with attention, with love, with quiet persistence, the garden will answer you with fruit and flowers, not from outside, but from the inner knowing that you are living fully in alignment with your true nature. And when that happens, you no longer ask how to find peace, because you have become the gardener of peace. And life will answer you with unending springs, elevating yourself from victim to creator. No one is born a victim. No one is destined to endure life as a burden. The feeling of being hurt, betrayed, forced, or forgotten is not your true identity. These are merely roles assigned to you by circumstances, by memories, by things you have never had the chance to see clearly. At the deepest level, you are not the one life happens to. You are the one who creates. And between these two extremes lies a single shift, not in outward action, but in the way you define yourself within. As long as you think of yourself as a victim, no matter how much you do, every effort will carry the flavor of defense, fear, and limitation. But the moment you begin to see yourself as a creator, even the smallest act becomes a deliberate step in the journey of rebirth. A victim believes the world decides their fate, that others are the reason for their pain, that external circumstances outweigh inner strength. They wait to be rescued. They cast blame. They tell their story as proof that they can do nothing but endure. A creator is different. They do not deny what has happened, but they refuse to be defined by it. They understand that what happened may leave a wound, but they themselves decide whether that wound becomes a scar of ruin or a gateway to awakening. The first step in elevating yourself is not achieving something grand. It is daring to refuse to live as someone whose life is dictated for them. It is standing up in your own mind and declaring, I am no longer the result of my past. I am not the child who was left behind. I am not the one who failed. I am no longer the one who must silently endure everything. I am the one rewriting my story with conscious hands, with a healed heart, and with an awakened mind. You do not have to change your entire life at once. You only have to change the way you respond to what happens. When someone insults you, the victim feels diminished. The creator recognizes they have the power not to react. When plans fall apart, the victim feels defeated. The creator sees a lesson to be learned. When the past resurfaces, the victim is dragged under. The creator views it as part of the journey toward maturity. The difference is not in the event. It is in the one who is witnessing it. You cannot be both a victim and a creator. One always looks outward for a culprit. The other always turns inward for a solution. One is trapped in the question, why is this happening to me? Asterisk. The other asks, what can I create from here? Asterisk. And the truth is, you can switch roles at any moment. No one can stop you from changing the way you define yourself except you. When you make that shift, you no longer live in the old pattern. You enter a new space where power begins to flow again, like a river finding its course. Not everyone will support you in this transformation. When you stop playing the victim, those still living in that role may feel threatened. They may say you are delusional, that you are avoiding reality, that you are no longer the person they knew, but do not let that pull you back. You were not born to maintain someone else's comfort zone. You were born to express the divine as fully as possible. And the divine never binds you to an old script. It always calls you upward, to a place where you take responsibility for the thoughts you choose, the emotions you hold, and the actions you create. Becoming a creator does not mean you will never be hurt, but you will no longer depend on the hurt to define you. You will know that pain cannot always be avoided, but suffering is a choice. You will see yourself not as one who is enduring, but as one who is tempering the soul through every experience, and from that place you will act not to prove yourself, but because it is the natural expression of an awakened spirit. You will say no to what no longer serves you. You will choose what nourishes you over what makes you small. You will walk forward without needing everyone to understand, because you know you alone are responsible for your life. No one needs to give you this power. You have had it all along. You only need to remember to stop seeing yourself through the old eyes, to refuse to define yourself by chapters already lived. When you do this, you will see clearly life is no longer something that happens to you. It is something you are co-creating. You are the co-author, the scriptwriter, the one who chooses the role you will play next. And in that choice, you not only change your own direction, you open a doorway for others, those watching you to find themselves again. So be courageous. Step out of the old role, choose again, and begin to live as a true creator, for that is who you really are, serving humanity, the consciousness of oneness. The true maturity of a soul does not end with healing itself. It expands into a journey of service when you begin to realize you are a creator, the master of your mental garden, the sacred voice speaking in the midst of life's noise. You also begin to see that awakening is no longer a private matter. It becomes a gift you offer back to humanity, not because you seek recognition, but because you can no longer live any other way. Every transformation within you has an effect. A person who pauses to understand rather than judge is planting a new seed in the collective field of consciousness. A person who chooses love over fear is softening a layer of vibration for the entire community. And a person who decides to forgive not because the other deserves it, but because they will not carry resentment is breaking the chain of inherited pain. This is service in its deepest and most subtle form. Service does not always take the shape of grand actions. Sometimes it is listening to someone with your full presence. Sometimes it is a silent blessing offered to a stranger. Sometimes it is keeping your integrity in a world full of pretense. And sometimes it is simply choosing not to spread something harmful, choosing silence instead of reaction, choosing to hold a calm space within you as a sanctuary for anyone who has lost their way. Service begins with the understanding that we are all connected. Nothing happens within one person that does not touch the whole. Your consciousness is a single thread in the vast tapestry of humanity. When you rise, the entire tapestry shifts. When you fall, that vibration ripples outward as well. We have been taught for far too long to compete, to separate, to prove we are distinct individuals, to guard the self as if it were a fortress. But the more you defend it, the more you isolate yourself, the more you try to set yourself apart from others, the more you become drained. The truth is, you were not designed to exist alone. You are part of a living whole. Just as a cell cannot survive apart from the body, you cannot truly thrive without feeling connection. Service is that connection, not out of obligation, but because when you live in your divine nature, you no longer wish to harm anyone. You only wish to help heal, not to be a good person. But because you know everyone is a part of yourself, when you live in a state of service, your actions become clear. You no longer wrestle with what to choose or what to do, because every decision is guided by a single question. Does this uplift life? Asterisk. If the answer is yes, you move forward. If it is no, you stop. There is no need to force yourself into an external moral code or borrowed ethic. Your deepest conscience has become your compass. And every time you choose rightly, you are not just walking your own path, you are paving the way for others. Living to serve does not mean abandoning your personal life. On the contrary, you live more fully, more purposefully, and more freely. You are no longer trapped in the question, what will I get from this? Asterisk. You shift to a greater, deeper question. What wants to be given through me? Asterisk. And when you live with that question, life becomes a flow. What is needed will come. What is no longer needed will leave. You no longer need to control everything, for you are being guided from within. This is the power of the voice within, not merely a voice you hear, but a space you return to, a still, open space where you no longer separate yourself from others, from life, from the whole. Service is also how you return the gift that life once gave you, perhaps a person who believed in you when you could not believe in yourself, a book that opened your eyes beyond the darkness, a moment of awakening that pulled you back from the edge. These did not happen for you to keep to yourself. They were the starting point for you to become a channel through which the light continues to spread. And when you give without holding back, you discover something extraordinary. You are never emptied. The more you give, the more you are filled. For the energy of love and service does not diminish. It multiplies every time it is given in freedom. Service does not make you smaller. It makes you greater not in the eyes of others, but in your deep connection with yourself. You no longer need to stand out, for you are grounded. You no longer need to be better than anyone, for you are enough. You no longer need to prove your worth, for you are living it. And in that state, You are not just an individual living well. You are a healthy cell contributing to the healing of the whole human body. You are no longer a solitary person trying to live rightly. You are the embodiment of a unified consciousness awakening in a divided world. And that is the highest service, not through noise, but through the quiet depth of a heart that has opened two sacred laws, the law of mind and the law of the divine. There are principles that never change, no matter where you live, what you believe, or what you have experienced. They are not bound by religion, era, or culture. They do not require human belief to exist. They do not speak aloud. Yet they are always at work. These are the two sacred laws that keep everything in the universe in divine order, the law of mind and the law of the divine. Without understanding them, you move through life unconsciously, caught in effects without knowing their causes. But when you do understand them, you stop stumbling in the dark and begin stepping into your role as a co-creator with life. The law of mind declares that everything in life begins with thought. Nothing exists in the material world that did not first exist in the realm of spirit. A building must be imagined before it is built. A melody must be felt before it can be played. A new life must be conceived in awareness before it can be lived. The mind is the place where the seed is planted, and life is the soil that receives it. Every thought sustained by attention becomes the pattern for action, and action becomes the result. If you wish to change the result, you cannot simply work on the surface. You must return to the depth of thought and begin there. The law of mind does not distinguish between good and bad. It simply fulfills its function, reflecting what you believe to be true. If you believe life is dangerous, you will repeatedly encounter situations that reinforce that belief. If you believe you are worthy of love, you will attract relationships that match that truth. This does not mean you can control everything that happens, but it does mean you can change the way you shape your life by choosing which thoughts to keep, and in that choice, transformation begins. The law of the divine goes deeper still. It speaks not only of the individual mind, but of the nature of life itself. It affirms that life is sacred, ordered, and purposeful. Everything that happens has a reason beyond the narrow view of the ego. Nothing is random. Every event, every person, every experience plays a role in the great drama of awakening you to something you need to remember. The law of the divine does not operate by human time, nor does it answer in terms of right or wrong. It guides you toward truth, even if the path sometimes winds through darkness. Injustice, pain, and loss are not punishments. They are calls from within, urging you to wake up, remember, and choose differently. When you understand the law of the divine, you stop asking, why is this happening to me? Asterisk, and begin asking, what is this trying to teach me? Asterisk, you no longer resist what comes, but learn to move through it with awareness. You stop seeing life as treating you unfairly and begin to see it as deepening you to bring forth something greater. You realize you have not been abandoned. You are being called to a deeper connection. You have not failed. You are being redirected. Things are not falling apart. Something new is being born from the ashes. The law of mind and the law of the divine are not separate. They work together like two heartbeats of an awakened soul. On one side, you have the power to choose the thoughts from which your life will grow. On the other, you learn to trust the deeper order moving beneath all things. When you combine the two, you no longer live as a controller. You live as a companion to life. You plant with intention, nurture with attention, and release at the right moment so the divine can make the way. You do not force everything to bend to your will, yet you do not sit passively waiting for a miracle. You act from within and trust the outcome to the wisdom greater than yourself. Life will test this understanding. There will be moments when the law of mind seems not to work, when the good you have thought does not yet appear. There will be times when the law of the divine feels cruel, when you cannot see the reason for your pain. But stay with it. Keep planting the right seeds. Keep trusting that order is still at work, even if the eye cannot yet see. For many things can only be understood in hindsight, and at some point you will see that nothing was wasted. No pain was random. No delay was without purpose. Wisdom is not in how much you can control, but in how deeply you understand these two laws. When you grasp their essence, you stop being pulled by circumstance. You act from the depths. You think as one who has remembered who you are. You live as one walking in light, not because everything is easy, but because you are no longer blind. And in that state, life opens like a sacred doorway, leading you into a deep refuge that cannot be taken away. For you have understood. You are not apart from the great order. You are part of it. And you are learning to move with it in awareness, in trust, and with a heart open to the divine. Scientific prayer, the four-step method. Are you still praying in the old way, pleading for something from an outside source, as though God were a distant stranger, and you were trying to earn favor in hopes of receiving a blessing? If you are listening to this, let me ask you directly, have you ever truly felt a deep change in your life through prayer? Or have you simply repeated familiar words in a state of habit, comforting yourself with the thought that believing is enough? Thank you for staying here, for not turning away, for knowing there is something deeper waiting to be discovered within yourself. Now, let us step into one of the most profound and effective principles Emmet Fox ever shared, the art of scientific prayer. Prayer is not fearful, begging. It is not a list of wishes sent up to a faraway deity. True prayer is a deliberate, conscious, directed act of the mind. It does not soften God's heart, it softens yours. It does not change God, it changes the frequency of your own vibration, so that you align with the divine that has always been present. In the foundation of scientific prayer, you are not asking for a miracle. You are making space for what is already right and true to come forth. And that is done through a specific method. 4 steps, clear, profound, and repeatable in any circumstance. The first step is recognition. Recognize that there is only one source, one supreme intelligence, one divine life operating throughout the universe and equally present within you. This is not a mere conceptual statement. It is a deep, certain affirmation from the core of your belief that God is not far away. The creative power of the universe is moving through you right now. When you begin from this unity, you set the foundation for an action that is not separate. Prayer gains its power from the removal of all division between the one who prays and that which is prayed for. The second step is unification. This is where you see yourself not as a weak being in need of rescue, but as a channel through which the divine expresses. You begin to identify yourself with the qualities of God: light, wisdom, love, wholeness, freedom, abundance, healing. You no longer say, I am praying for health, asterisk. You say, I am health made manifest, asterisk. I am wisdom shining forth, asterisk. I am peace revealed, asterisk. This is the mental act of reestablishing your true nature. You are not trying to become something, you are returning to what you already are, but have forgotten. The third step is declaration. This is when you affirm what you choose to appear, not through pleading, but through the authority given to you by your oneness with the Supreme Intelligence. You do not say, please help me receive this, asterisk. You say, I know this is already active within me, asterisk. I choose to recognize the healing taking place, asterisk. I affirm that the light is making the way, asterisk. I declare that abundance is now expressing itself, asterisk. Declaration is not blind affirmation, it is the setting of the mind's direction. Like a captain giving the order to change course, like a gardener choosing the seeds to plant Like an artist making the first stroke on the canvas, declaration marks the turning point. The fourth step is release. After you have recognized, unified, and declared, you do not attempt to control the outcome. You release it in trust. This is not surrender in defeat. It is sacred surrender, knowing that the highest good will be arranged according to the wisdom of life, beyond the limited calculations of the ego. You no longer watch over the result, asking why nothing is happening. You no longer force it to arrive on your timetable. You step back in silence, with gratitude, and in that state, the right outcome will emerge, sometimes exactly as you envisioned, sometimes beyond anything you could have imagined. 4 simple steps, but not easy without consistent practice. Recognition, unification, declaration, release. No begging, no pleading, no doubting. This is the path from unconsciousness to deliberate creation, from fear to trust, from separation to unity. And the beauty is that you can do this anywhere when facing a difficult decision, when challenged with a health issue, when feeling lost, or simply when you wish to rekindle the light within. No ritual is required, no outer condition, only an awakened mind and a heart ready to return. And you, the one hearing these words, are you willing to pause for a moment to try it? Just a few minutes. No one watching, no one judging, only you and the quiet space within. Only you and the deep presence of God, not outside, but in your breath, in your heartbeat, in each thought you choose to keep. Try it today. Begin with recognition, continue with unification. Declare what you choose, and then release it with deep gratitude. That is when the miracle begins. That is when you stop searching outside and become a living part of the divine already at work. The core element, divine love. Divine love is the central force that keeps the entire universe from collapsing. It is not a personal emotion, not born of fleeting attraction, not dependent on any outer condition. It is the primal substance, the steady and unseen current, holding all things in a state of connection and life. In the deepest spiritual understanding, love is not a state, it is a being. It is not something you search for, it is what you have always carried within, though at times forgotten. Divine love is the true nature of God, and when you live apart from love, you are living against your own essence. Every conflict, anxiety, division, tension, and suffering arises from a single root cause, the absence of love, not because love does not exist, but because it is veiled by fear, by the personal ego, by prejudice, and by wounds yet to be healed. When the mind is clouded by resentment, when the heart is frozen by disappointment, love cannot flow freely. Yet, love never disappears. It waits for you to open the door again, not by force, not by reason, but by a simple returning. Each time you release the need to control, each time you choose understanding over judgment, each time you place compassion above ego, divine love is allowed to move through you once more. Divine love is not confined to human relationships. It is the current you can feel when you see a flower bloom, when you hear the laughter of a child, when you stand in a forest and sense that everything is breathing in the same rhythm. It needs no reason, only your stillness to recognize it. And when you truly touch this love, you no longer feel alone, not because someone stands beside you, but because you know you are within a greater life, an unseen embrace that holds you, whether you are joyful or sorrowful, right or wrong, successful or failing. Divine love is also the one force capable of melting the resistance of the ego. The ego can argue against reason, push back against discipline, and deceive with its self-made stories. but it cannot escape love. For love does not argue, does not force, does not demand. It simply is quiet, percent, like the sun that still shines, though clouds may cover it. And so, when you learn to love without possessing, when you forgive without condition, when you accept another as they are not because they have changed, but because you have love, becomes an unlimited power to heal. This is why every true spiritual awakening leads to the same place, where you no longer live to prove anything, but to express love in each act, where you no longer see others as enemies or strangers, but as parts of yourself walking a different path, where you no longer wait for the world to change so you can be at peace, but choose to become the place where peace begins. In this state, all separation dissolves. You are neither victim nor savior. You are simply the channel through which divine love flows, allowing it to do what it has always done: connect, heal, restore, and renew. When you place love at the core of every choice, you stop being deceived by appearances. You are no longer led by impulse. You see deeper, wider, farther. You know that each person carries an unnamed pain, an unspoken longing, a shadowed place, yet to be illuminated, and instead of reacting, you respond with presence. Instead of resisting, you invite. Instead of criticizing, you look through the eyes of compassion, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough not to let the past rule the present. Divine love does not make you blind. On the contrary, it makes you clear-eyed. It is untouched by personal need. It does not say, "I love you if you make me happy. If you do not hurt me," asterisk. It says, "I love you because in you there is part of me, and in me there is part of you." Asterisk. Such love does not demand perfection. It loves what is true. And in that unconditional love, the people find the chance to be reborn, to become the best version of themselves, to shed their armor, to be wholly themselves, without needing permission. When divine love is the root, every prayer carries power. Every action holds meaning. Every relationship becomes sacred. Each step in life ceases to be a lonely search and becomes an expression of an endless source of light. You do not need to accomplish anything great to be worthy of this love. You need only remember you were born from love. You live in love, and you are called to be love in human form. This is not something to attain, it is something to return to. And in that return, you stop seeking anything more, for all you ever needed has been here all along, within you. True faith, understanding through personal experience. Faith is not believing in something merely because others say so. It is not the repetition of a belief system passed down through generations, nor is it a temporary comfort to soothe you when life becomes too perplexing. True faith is a living experience, a deep knowing born from the direct meeting between you and life itself. It is not theory, but the result of those moments when you have nothing left to hold on to except one thing, a whisper from within telling you that you have never been abandoned. That is the power of the voice within, not merely a voice you hear, but a space you return to. You cannot borrow another person's faith. You may begin there, you may learn from books, from sermons, from a guide, but at some point, faith must become personal. It must pass through your own blood and tears, through your deepest doubts, and be born at the very point of your own breaking. Without experience, there is no real faith, only a fragile set of ideas easily shattered when life does not go according to plan. But when you have walked through fire, when you have fallen to the depths and found that something still held you, when you have been lost and finally returned to see that the light had never gone out, then faith begins to stand as a true, undeniable support. True faith needs no proof. It does not have to be defended or justified. For it does not arise from the intellect, but from direct recognition. It is like the one who has been thirsty and has drunk water. You cannot convince such a person that water does not exist. They have tasted, they have felt, and from that moment their faith is no longer built on hope but on knowing. And this knowing makes faith humble, not arrogant, not imposing, not argumentative, for it does not need to win any debate. It only needs to live as part of truth expressing itself. There will be times in life when everything you once trusted collapses. Flanc fail, loved ones depart, health, finances, identity, all begin to shake. And in those moments, if your faith is built only on outer things, it will fall with them. But if you have touched that inner space where all sound falls silent, yet life becomes more vivid than ever, you will know how to rise again without many words, without reasons, only with presence. That presence becomes the surest foundation of faith, for it is not conditioned by circumstance and does not vanish when belief is tested. True faith is not the denial of difficulty. It does not make you a blind optimist. On the contrary, faith enables you to face fear directly, to walk through darkness without being consumed by it. It does not promise that things will always go your way, but it assures you that you will not lose yourself in the midst of it all. Faith is not what keeps you from suffering, it is the strength that carries you through it without breaking. Or when you know you are not alone, when you sense something greater, still present in every breath, you begin to act differently. You panic less, resist less, judge less. You live with a seasoned stillness and a clarity beyond ordinary logic. Faith does not make you avoid action. It inspires you to act with courage. For you are no longer driven by outcomes. You know that what you are doing is not in vain, even if results are not yet visible. Faith makes you honest, because you know there is nothing to hide from the living presence within you. Faith makes you humble, because you know you are but a small river fed by an infinite ocean. And faith makes you strong, not because you no longer feel weak, but because you no longer fear weakness. You allow yourself to be human, to be real, to be wrong, to learn, to love, and to live as you are. The most beautiful thing about true faith is that it has no fixed form. It may show up as gratitude, as stillness, as a small act in the midst of a busy day, as a prayer without words. True faith is a flame that needs no wind to burn, a spring that needs no rain to flow, a home you can return to at any moment, no matter how far life has carried you away. It is the gentle call in the night, the quiet yet undeniable certainty, the sense of being held by something you cannot see, but can always feel. And this is the real strength of the inner life, not how much you know, but how much you have truly lived, not how many sacred verses you can recite, but how many you have turned into life in every action, not how much you believe in God, but how much you have allowed God to live in each breath you take. When this happens, faith is no longer something distant. It becomes who you are, and you stop seeking it because you have become what you once sought, cleansing the mind, releasing the burden of emotion. The heaviest burden a person carries is not work, responsibility, failure, or circumstance. The true weight is the suppressed emotion, the unresolved memory, the layers of negative thought that have accumulated over the years without being cleansed, a mind polluted by resentment, regret, envy, worry, or shame will exhaust the body, cloud the spirit, and make life feel cramped. Even when the outer conditions appear sufficient, cleansing the mind is therefore not a luxury reserved. For those with time to meditate, it is a vital necessity for anyone who wishes to return to the natural clarity and peace they once knew. You cannot receive new light if you are still holding on to thick layers of dust. You cannot hear the inner voice if the mind is loud with the unlaid ghosts of the past. Cleansing the mind does not mean erasing memory or denying emotion. On the contrary, it is the journey of recognition and release. You do not chase away unpleasant feelings. You invite them into the light, observe them with compassion, and gently return them to where they came from. Every negative emotion, when seen in the right way, dissolves in the light of awareness. But if suppressed or avoided, it hides in the subconscious and continues to shape your behavior, beliefs, and choices without your knowing. This is why many people cannot understand why they keep encountering the same patterns, why they still attract relationships that wound them, why they cannot let go of a harmful habit even when they know its cost. The cause is not on the surface of action, but in the deeper current within that has not been purified. The process of cleansing need not be dramatic. It does not require hours of meditation or elaborate rituals. It begins with honesty, the willingness to face the truth of what you feel. No embellishment, no pretending to be fine, no judging yourself for still being fragile. Honesty is the doorway to freedom. When you admit you are angry without denying it, sad without blaming, jealous without self-contempt, and you open a new space, a space where you are no longer controlled by emotion but are instead mastering your own presence. In that space, you begin to understand that emotion is a passing current, not your essence. You have emotions, but you are not your emotions. Letting go of emotion does not mean abandoning feeling. It means gently releasing the old stories you have clung to as part of your identity. Those who hurt you, the mistakes you made, the words that pierced you, these are the bundles of luggage you have been unconsciously carrying. Every time you revisit them, you feed them energy to survive. But if you are awake enough to realize you can set them down not because you won or lost, but because you are tired and wish to travel lighter, then you no longer need an apology. You no longer need anything repaired. You simply grant yourself permission to step out of the loop. This is true forgiveness. Forgiveness is not an act for another person, it is a gift you give yourself. The more the mind is cleansed, the clearer the intuition becomes. When you are no longer ruled by clouded emotion, you begin to sense guidance from a deeper level, the level of clarity that does not come from thought. You do not need to overanalyze. You simply know. You know what is right for you, what to say, what to do, when to pause, and where to let go. This clarity does not arise from knowledge, but from an inner state that has been purified, like a still lake reflecting the sky. The quiet mind allows you to see what is truly there without the distortion of personal bias. Cleansing the mind is not a final destination, but a continual process. Each day you live, you meet with information, energy, and interactions both positive and negative. Each day is a chance to sweep within. You need not wait until everything breaks apart. Just a single moment in the day, pause, notice your breath, place your hand on your chest, and ask yourself how you feel. There is no need to answer in words. Just stay with the feeling, watching it as you would a child who needs to be held. And when you stop resisting, that feeling will dissolve like a thin cloud, leaving the sky clearer than before. Cleansing the mind does not make you numb. On the contrary, it allows you to feel more deeply, yet without being swept away. You still ache at injustice, you still marvel at beauty, you still cry, laugh, love, and feel anger. But you no longer lose yourself in these experiences. You become both the clear-eyed observer and the wholehearted participant. You live fully in the world while standing firmly in yourself. This is true freedom. Nothing outside can shake you for long, because inside you have become light. spacious, steady, and luminous. You no longer wait for someone to bring you peace. You have become your own place of refuge, becoming a channel for God, serving the whole world. Becoming a channel for God does not mean abandoning your current life, nor does it demand that you become a flawless, mistake-free persona. It simply means allowing the divine life to move through you in the way you live, the way you think, the way you act each day. When you no longer live to prove something, when you release the need to protect your image or defend your personal gain, you become open and spacious. And in that openness, the power of God can flow through you as naturally as water finding its way to the lowest place. In that moment, every word you speak, every act you take, every thought you carry becomes a vessel for light. You do not need to do something grand. You simply need to be present with inner purity and honesty. When you become a channel, everything you touch is lifted, not because you are trying to make it sacred, but because you yourself are the sacred presence moving in the material world. Global service does not begin with large organizations or elaborate plans. It begins with awareness. When you step out of the center of the ego and place yourself in the shared current of life, you have already begun to serve. Service is when you choose to sow peace instead of resentment, to listen instead of speaking when it is unnecessary, to hold silent space instead of reacting from old habits. You serve when you wipe away someone's tears without them knowing your name, when you forgive even if they never asked, when you do the right thing, even if no one notices, when you live as though light is always present, even when darkness surrounds you. Service is the conscious choice of a soul that has remembered who it truly is. Becoming a channel for God is not something you achieve through accomplishment. It is what you allow to happen when you remove resistance. Life does not require you to be perfect, but it does require you to be clear. It does not need you to hold a title, but it does need you to be genuine. It does not demand that you know everything, but it does ask you to trust in what is right as you feel it from deep within. This is not some lofty ideal for a chosen few. This is an ability inherent in every soul, waiting to be awakened. You do not need to stand on a platform or lead crowds. If you live kindly in a small room, love your family, listen to yourself each day, harm no one, and never betray the deepest truth within you, then you are already part of the force of light that keeps this planet from straying too far off course. Service does not require recognition, because the essence of service is knowing you are not doing it for yourself. When you begin to live from awareness, you see that everything you do ripples outward like circles on water. A single positive thought you hold may inspire a wise action tomorrow. A healing word you offer someone may completely alter their future choice. Your silent presence in a tense situation may dissolve an entire chain of negative reactions. You will not see the result immediately, but life records everything unseen. And in that quiet order, nothing is ever wasted. When you live as a channel, you stop asking how to get what you want and begin asking how to give the best of what you are. You stop asking when the world will change and start asking what you can do today to make it hurt less, even just a little. And from those small actions, a deep shift begins, for the energy you release when no longer controlled by the ego travels farther, strikes deeper, and lasts longer than any personal effort. You are no longer the one shining the light, you become the light itself. Not everyone will understand this path. Many will see you as different, quieter, slower to react, living more deeply, no longer chasing the same things they do. But if you have touched the sacred presence within yourself, you cannot live in contradiction to it again. You will choose truth over comfort, stillness over noise, awareness over safety, not because you think yourself higher, but because you see more clearly. And once you see more clearly, you cannot return to the old way. You must move forward, not because you have to, but because you are called. And you say yes. When enough people live this way, the planet will no longer need saving. It will realign itself. When enough people release the burden of the ego, the collective energy will lighten. When enough people are willing to live as channels, light will no longer be an idea. It will be a living reality felt in every breath, every glance, every quiet act in the midst of life. You do not have to wait. You do not need anyone's permission. You only need to choose to step out of the center of the ego and place yourself into the vast and flowing current of life. In that choice, you no longer live for yourself alone. You live as a prayer being fulfilled, as a light radiating outward, as a stream bringing life back to what was withering. And this is the highest service, wordless, unconditional, and without limit. You do not need to climb a mountain to find God. You do not need to cross an ocean to find the light. God is present in every breath, in every choice, in the stillness between two thoughts. Each time you choose to return to a clear mind, each time you release a burden and forgive once more, you are opening the way for the divine power to flow through you. And when you live as a silent channel, you are not only transforming your own life, you are healing the world. Remember, light does not need to be found. It only needs to be allowed. And you, yes, you are the doorway through which it happens.